If you want to travel Iraq and to do it on your own, I'll show you exactly how to do it in this video. I just spent 3 months traveling Iraq and I had the best time. Whether you just have a few days or a few weeks, I'll show you how to get the most of it. From how to get in, how to get your visa, how to get to your hotel, safety, what to see, what to eat, where to go, how to get there, how to get around, all that stuff. It's all covered in this video. And because it's a long video, there's chapters on it, so you can play back any section you like as often as you want. Iraq was a super cool place to visit. It's called the cradle of civilization after all. It's got more ancient sites that fill our history books than you can imagine. Best of all though is the kindness and hospitality of the people, how excited they are to see foreigners come visit. The food is amazing, the tea is amazing, many good reasons to visit. Let me go over a little bit on how this guide is arranged. I've created a special map for you guys on Google Maps, which you'll be able to take with you on your trip. We'll go over this map quite a bit in this video, so you'll be very familiar with Iraq and on how to use the map. The link for this map is in the description below, so you can access it and have a copy of your own. It lists the main cities, the main attractions, the alternate additional attractions, hotels, and some restaurants. To give you a good understanding about Iraq without making you have to watch the whole video, I'll first quickly go through the cities and attractions you'll be considering. Then of course we'll go into more details for each destination. Make sure you watch the sections called Good Things to Know before arriving and what to watch out for near the end of the video. There's key information there you do not want to miss. What you can and should see will greatly depend on how much time you have and how fast or slow you like to travel. If you only have about a week, you can see the absolute must items. You will feel rushed, but then you can rest when you get home. If you have a whole month, you could see just about all the highlights in both federal Iraq and Iraqi Kurdistan. One great news is that Iraq is not a huge country and you can get from Baghdad to just about anywhere in half a day. Most of your city changes will be from 1 to 3 hours. All right, quick overview of all of Iraq. In one day, you can see Baghdad highlights and Takasra. In one more day, you can visit Babylon and Karbala. On day 3 and 4, you can visit the marshes as well as the ziggurat of Ur. At this point, you can return to Baghdad and fly out. This is really the absolute shortest visit to Iraq I can possibly recommend. And of course, I hope you have way more time than just 5 days to visit Iraq. If you have additional day, you can visit Samarra as well as the ziggurat of Akre. In one additional day, you can visit Najaf. In 1 or more days, you can add Basra. And at any time, you can return to Baghdad and fly out. Once again, if you have more days, and assuming you didn't add any of those additional days, on the 6th day, you can visit Mosul and then go to Erbil, and again, you can fly out. And so now that would be 1 week in Iraq with a very quick visit of Erbil in Iraqi Kurdistan. Once again, of course, if you have more time, you can go to Duhok. Duhok is an ideal spot to do many day trips. In one day, you can do Lalish and the Rabban Hermizd Monastery. In one day, you can visit Amedi. In one day, you can visit Akre. And in one day, you can visit the Mattai Monastery, which is also possible to do as a day trip from Erbil. And again, at any time, you can get to Erbil and fly out. If you have more time, you can visit Sulaymaniyah. And again, if you have even more time, you can visit Saran. Once again, at any time, you can return to Erbil and fly out. So you can see at this point, I've given you an overview of all of Iraq, where you can visit for as little as 5 days or add day upon day and extend your visit through the federal Iraq or Iraqi Kurdistan and be able to fly out either from Baghdad or Erbil pretty much on any day you wish. Now, Those are just the highlights. In this map alone, there's at least 86 places listed among cities, main attractions, and additional attractions. So you can see you can spend a lot of time in Iraq, and there's still tons of things that aren't even listed on this map. All right, now that you have a quick overview of all of Iraq, let's talk about getting you into the country. When you fly to Baghdad, the visa desk is just a few meters away. Have your $77 ready, and about 15 minutes to an hour later, depending on how many people are on your flight, you'll have your visa in hand. There's one thing you need to watch out for regarding proof of hotel reservations, which I'll go over in the what to watch out for section, so make sure you watch that later. But with your visa in hand, you'll go through immigration, collect your bags. If you like, you can get some money at the ATM, and if you like, you can get a SIM card if you've arrived during the day. If you've arrived in the middle of the night, then the SIM card places won't be operational. With your bags in hand, money ready, now let's get you to your hotel. The Baghdad airport is a little unique, where only certain vehicles are allowed in and out, and so you have to book a special transport vehicle. There is one cheaper way of getting in and out, but it's actually quite cumbersome, is how I tried it the first time, which is to get a shuttle out of the airport and then try to use an app or hail a taxi, but then they really try to rip you off. It was really not worth the hassle. So from now on, my recommendation is to just use the airport transfers. They are between $35,000 to $45,000 for the whole car to get you to your hotel. And that depends on where your hotel is located. If it's west of the Tigris River or east of the river, and then that determines the price. Now, again, that's the price for the whole car, so you can share with other people if you're able to find other people to share with, or if you're traveling by yourself, then try to see if anyone else is also going nearby and you can jump in with them. So it actually might be a good idea to make some friends on the plane before you board or after you board, so that you can share a taxi and save some money. Don't worry, we'll talk about hotels and attractions in Baghdad later. Right now, we're just trying to talk about getting into the country. One thing I want to mention when you first get into Baghdad is don't panic. Baghdad is a very unique city in Iraq. If you arrive during the day, especially, or at night, but especially during the day, on the way to your hotel, you will see so much military, tanks, military personnel in full uniform with big guns and all that, and you're like, wow, what did I just fly into? Is this place in the middle of a war? But I assure you, the reason for that is because Baghdad is a special city, and your transfer from the airport to the hotel or vice versa happens to go through some key areas, and only those key areas are so heavily military covered. Once you get out of those areas, even in Baghdad or especially in other cities, you will see you're not in the middle of a war zone. It's perfectly fine. But just to let you know, don't panic when you're first arriving in Baghdad. All right, so you've arrived in Baghdad, you're at your hotel. Welcome to Iraq. Let's plan your trip. All right, in this section, we're going to talk about how to get around the cities and how to get from one city to another. To get around the city is actually quite simple. I recommend taxis, and especially I recommend using the apps to get around. For example, the two more popular ones are the Careem app and the Uber app, which is spelled OBR. There are other ways to get around. There's buses, there's 15-passenger vans. In some places, there's tuk-tuks. There's many ways to get around, but the taxis, especially using the app, are so cheap. I'm not sure if you want to spend extra time trying to take the absolute cheapest routes to get around the city. That's up to you, but otherwise, my recommendation is to spend your time enjoying the sights rather than trying to save another dollar. All right, now let's talk about how to get from one city in Iraq to another. And this is one thing that is great about traveling in Iraq, because just about every city has at least one transportation hub, and they call them a garage. So let's go over an example of how you would get from Baghdad to Erbil. So in Baghdad, from your hotel, you would ask, hey, I want to go to Erbil by shared taxi. Which garage do I have to go to? And they would tell you, oh, okay, you need to go to Garage Al-Nadha. So in that case, you would take a taxi or a Careem or an OBR to take you to the appropriate garage. And then in that garage, you would ask to go to the garage in Erbil. This is important. So from a garage to a garage. And then you would get into the appropriate car, which would take you to the garage in Erbil. In the garage in Erbil, again, you would either take a taxi, a Careem, or an Uber to your hotel. And there you go. You just went from one city to another. And you would repeat this everywhere. Generally, you go from where you are to the appropriate garage, from the garage to the destination garage, and then from the destination garage, again with a taxi or Careem or OBR, to your destination hotel. The pros for using shared taxis to get around is that you can get from anywhere to anywhere without the need for reservations. For most destinations, they go throughout the day, prices are set, they're super affordable. The longest, most expensive rides will be around 25,000, and most rides will be far less than that, some as little as 2,000 dinars. Iraq isn't very big, and so for example, you can get from Baghdad to either Basra, Mosul, or Erbil in 5, 6, 7 hours. You can even get from Mosul all the way to Erbil or Sulaymaniyah the same day with a changeover in Baghdad, but that'll be a very long day, but still, it's possible. Really, the only con for using shared taxis to get around is that for less popular destinations, sometimes you can't get there early enough, and you have to leave there earlier than you would wish, but this is for very few sites that you might have to worry about. For example, Amedi and Akre are both destinations where you can get to and back from shared taxis, but sometimes it takes a little time to get enough people for the shared taxi to fill up to take you to the destination. And the last shared taxi that wants to come back is at like 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. So it really cuts your visit short, but it's enough for some of these smaller cities. Let's talk about safety in Iraq. And I actually have a lot of good news for you in this section, because Iraq is actually quite safe, and things you might have to worry about in some other countries like safety at night or being mugged or pickpocketed or having your things stolen. These things are very rare in Iraq, and I actually don't know anyone that this happened to, so that's great news. Additionally, if you're in Iraq to visit all the things we're going to talk about, you'll be in very popular places with a lot of people on roads that are well traveled, well monitored, really nothing to worry about. As a responsible traveler, and also to feel more safe and secure, if you're ever worried about where you're going and if it's okay or not, you can always ask your hotel or anyone else who just came from there or is going there or been there, and you'll know right away whether it's anything you need to be concerned about or not. And generally the answer will be you have nothing to worry about. But you can ask to feel better. There's only one road that I'm going to recommend you stay off of, and only by chance did we almost end up here, but we didn't. Again, because the locals and the checkpoints will always look out for your safety. And that road is highlighted on the map that you have. And the only reason you might accidentally even get near this road is if you happen to make a stop at Kirkuk to see the citadel, etc. And from there you wanted to take a shared taxi to Mosul. The locals take this road. However, as a foreigner, it's recommended you don't take this road. Instead, if you happen to go from Kirkuk to Mosul or from Mosul to Kirkuk, instead of taking the traditional route, make sure you go through Erbil instead. And it's barely any longer, and it's barely any more expensive, and it's perfectly safe. So if you do that, you'll avoid that little stretch of road, which isn't as heavily military monitored, which again is what makes it less safe. But all the other roads that we will be discussing are either very heavily monitored or they're in very safe areas where you don't have to worry. As far as where to stay in each city, on the map I've listed places that I've either stayed at or have been recommended to me. So instead of talking about where to stay every single time at each city, just use this map, click, and see the name and location, and then consider yourself whether you want to stay there or not. But they're all listed here once and for all for you guys to check out. All right, now we get to the best part, what to see in each place. Let's talk about a great one day to visit Baghdad. Ideally, this would be a Friday, but any other day will be all right as well. So start very early, skip your breakfast at the hotel, go straight to where I've listed on the map here to eat Kahi and Gaymar. Absolutely delicious. Get there by 7:30 or 8 a.m. After that, either walk or take a short taxi to the Orange Flag and visit Mutanabi Street, all the way to the Tigris River. Visit the Sarai Market. Definitely visit Shabander Cafe to have their chai and hamith, which is like a dried lime drink. It's hot, it's super delicious. And see what's happening at Qishla, which is this area right here. If it's a Friday morning, oftentimes there's poet readings, there's people singing, it's super, super cool. They might be selling art, lots of energy, again, especially on a Friday morning. Many of the other things that I've shown on the map here are also open, especially in mornings. So, see what you're interested in visiting, doing some research before you go, and see which are the ones you want to take a look at. Try to get to the Martyrs Monument by noon. Either have lunch before or after. After that, if you're interested in visiting Takasra, you can take either an OBR or Kareem or even a taxi. Try to get there before sunset. It's a good place to get to before sunset and watch the sunset there. It could be that Takasra is under renovation. Whether they'll let you in or not, I'm not sure, depending on exactly when you're arriving in Baghdad. You can talk to people that have just gone and see their experience and decide whether you're interested in going. The other alternate is if you don't go to visit Takasra, then of course there's a ton of other things you could be checking out in Baghdad instead. Either way, try to get to Mutanabi Street by around 9 or later. At this hour, it has such an amazing energy. The lights are up, people are out, families, children, everything. It's absolutely amazing. And again, visit Shabander Cafe, have some more chai, have some more hamith. You can even smoke a shisha if you like. It's absolutely amazing. Do not miss Mutanabi at night, any day of the week. Again, especially after 9 p.m. So that would be one amazing day in Baghdad if you have only one day to visit. But again, Baghdad is a major city. You could spend weeks exploring it, eating, museums, etc. And there's many sites near Baghdad as well, so you could spend a lot of time if you have so much time. But this would be a wonderful one day in Baghdad. Of course, I've made videos in Baghdad doing pretty much everything I'm sharing with you here, as well as visiting all the things that are on the map. So I encourage you to check out my videos so that you can get a really good idea of what these sites look like, what they have to offer, and you'll be able to decide whether or not you want to go see them for yourself. The next day trip we're going to go over is visiting Karbala and Babylon. So Karbala is not that far from Baghdad, and Babylon is even closer still. I would recommend that if you're going to go further south from Karbala after visiting Karbala, which I would recommend you do, is that you check out of Baghdad and you check into your Karbala hotel in the morning. Once you're checked in Karbala, then you could do a day trip to Babylon. And after your day trip to Babylon, you would return back to Karbala and then spend the evening there. And then how many days you want to spend in Karbala is up to you, but just one day is sufficient to see the highlights of Babylon and Karbala. On the map, let's clean it up a little bit by turning off the additional attractions, the food, and the hotel. And now we can get a clearer view of Karbala and Babylon. So let's zoom in a little bit into Babylon. And here, what I would recommend that, of course, you must visit Babylon as well as the Babylon Palace. The additional sites in this area include the Babylon Theater, but that's an additional fee as well. You can decide whether you want to visit or not. After your visit to Babylon, you would again go back to Karbala. Let's look closer into Karbala. And again, the main attractions there are the two shrines. They are absolutely mind-blowing. They're the reason you go to Karbala. They're great to see during the day, and they're almost a must-see at night with all the lights on. Absolutely mind-blowing. In each location, you can turn on the additional attractions, as well as the food, as well as the hotel, etc., to get an idea of the places I've been and the places I recommend. And as we discussed before, the way you would get from Baghdad to Karbala is you would ask your hotel, hey, I want to go to Karbala, which garage should I go to? They would tell you which garage to go to, which is on the map as well. And from the garage, you would go to the garage in Karbala, and then from there you can probably just walk to your hotel from there. The Karbala garage is not terribly far from the middle of the city. Once you're checked into your hotel in Karbala, then you could visit the sites and enjoy your visit to Babylon and Karbala. The way you visit Babylon from Karbala is, again, you take a shared taxi. So once you've checked into your hotel in Karbala and you want to visit Babylon, what you want to do is you want to take a shared taxi to the town of Hilla. Hilla is the town nearby Babylon. So in Karbala, you would ask, hey, I want to go to Hilla. Where's the shared taxi? They would point it out to you. Then you take a shared taxi to Hilla. And right at the shared taxi in Hilla, there'll be plenty of people knowing you probably want to visit Babylon. And from there, you take a private taxi, visit Babylon, come back to the shared taxi area, and again, take a shared taxi back to Karbala, and your visit is complete. Of course, alternately, you can always find a private driver to drive you around at whatever prices you're able to negotiate, depending again how much time you have, how much money you have. Maybe you're just solo, maybe you're a big group. Depending on your situation, sometimes shared taxis are perfect, sometimes private taxis might be better off, especially if there's 3 or 4 of you that can share the cost of a private taxi. So keep that in mind. If you want to get a better idea of what it is to visit Karbala as well as Babylon, of course, I've made vlogs on my YouTube channel. Check them out. You'll get a much better idea and decide for yourself if you want to see what you want to see and how much time you want to spend at these sites. A highlight of visiting Iraq is visiting the Iraqi marshes. Let's discuss how you would do it. Starting from wherever you are, Baghdad, Karbala, or Najaf, or wherever you happen to be, you'll take a shared taxi to Nasiriyah. You will spend the night in Nasiriyah and prepare to start your day early the next morning. Next morning, have breakfast early, say 7 to 8 a.m. Immediately take a shared taxi to Chibayish. From there, have a short taxi to find the Martyrs Monument, and that's where you can do your boat tour. After your boat tour is finished, try to find a place and have mazgoof in Chibayish. It's their specialty. After you've had your mazgoof in Chibayish, return to Nasiriyah, and then if interested, visit Ur. I recommend getting to Ur before 3, even though the hours are listed are later. Sometimes they decide to close early. So if you get there by 3, you'll have a good chance that it'll still be open. And then when you're done with Ur, you'll spend another night in Nasiriyah. If you're really interested in sleeping in the marshes, you'll have to contact a tour company and pre-arrange it with them. I have videos on my channel covering Nasiriyah, marshes, and Ur. You can check them out and see where I've been, and also refer to the map for locations of like some places I've eaten, some cool shisha bars and tea shops, etc. If you decide to visit Basra, you can see that I stayed in Junyan Hotel 3, which is actually a very good location for seeing some of the key things in Basra. For example, you can easily walk to Shat Al Arab. You'll have a good view of the Italian bridge. You can visit some museums. There's good places to eat nearby, and all those are listed on the map for you. Once again, check out my video on Basra to get a good glimpse of what it'll be like if you want to visit yourself. Visiting Samarra can easily be done as a day trip from Baghdad using shared taxis. Now you might hear people telling you it's not possible, and that was true before, but things are changing in Iraq quickly, all for the better. So as of this recording, you can easily take a shared taxi from Baghdad to the shared taxi station in Samarra. At the checkpoint, you'll have to leave your passport behind at the checkpoint, and then you can visit Samarra, the minaret, as well as the Virgin or Khalifa Palace, and then come back to the checkpoint, collect your passport, and take a shared taxi back to Baghdad. Another really cool site is the Ziggurat of Akre, which you can do from Baghdad, or if you've pre-arranged a transport, you could add it to the same day that you visit Samarra. I was lucky enough that a friend from Iraq took me to see both Samarra and Akre together. Again, that vlog is on my channel. You can check it out and decide for yourself what things you want to visit. If you have time, of course, I recommend you spend a day in Najaf as well. It's the holiest place in the world for Shia Muslims. It also holds the biggest cemetery in the world with over 5 million bodies. It was one of the friendliest places in Iraq I've been to. So I had a wonderful time, and I recommend if you have time, to visit Najaf as well. Again, I have a YouTube video showing my experience there. Check it out and decide for yourself if it's something you want to add to your itinerary. At this point, we've covered the areas around Baghdad and south, and it's time to head north. You'll have to decide first whether or not you want to make a stop in Kirkuk or skip it. Of course, I've made a visit to Kirkuk and I've made a video on it for you. I encourage you to check it out to help you decide whether or not you want to stop by Kirkuk, as well as read a bit about Kirkuk's history because it is actually a very unique city. One thing I'd like to bring to your attention if you visit Kirkuk is that when you leave Kirkuk to go north, if you decide to go to Mosul, please don't take the shared taxi that goes directly between Kirkuk and Mosul. The final 30 minutes of that route is not considered safe. So, if you decide to visit Kirkuk, when you leave Kirkuk to go north, go to Erbil first. You can either visit Erbil, or if you want to go to Mosul first, go through Erbil first, and right from the shared taxi in Erbil, you can quickly get to Mosul. But do not take the shared taxi that goes direct from Kirkuk to Mosul. That's the only thing you have to keep in mind. Next stop is Mosul, and if at all you're able to spend a day or more in Mosul, I highly recommend and encourage you to do so. It was one of my most memorable visits in Iraq. If you do visit Mosul, I recommend you stay in the area where the hotel on the map that I've provided is shown. From there you can walk and see all the important things you need to see in Mosul. I won't spend too much time on this video talking about Mosul because again, I made a really good video about it before. You can check it out and see why I loved it so much. It's such a special city. Erbil is a cool city, and if you stay in the hotel that I've shown on the map, you'll be walking distance to everything you want to see. The citadel, places to eat, really cool. I also recommend that you don't skip visiting the shisha bar that I've shown on the map. Also super cool. Of course, you can check out the video I made on Erbil to decide what it is you want to see, do, and eat in the city. Alright, the next part we're going to talk about is the northwest part of Iraqi Kurdistan. There's a lot of cool things to visit there. Let's talk about it. You'll either start in Erbil or Mosul, and you'll want to end up in Duhok. Duhok is a good base to do day trips from to several sites, including Amedi, Akre, visiting the Rabban Hermizd Monastery, visiting Lalish. You can do a day trip to Amedi and come back to Duhok. You can do a day trip to Akre and then come back to Duhok. You can also do a day trip that combines Lalish as well as the Rabban Hermizd Monastery and come back to Duhok. Another day trip you can do is the Mattai Monastery and again come back to Duhok. Alternately, you can visit the Mattai Monastery as a day trip from Erbil. You can visit Akre and Amedi using shared taxis. However, to visit Lalish and the Rabban Hermizd Monastery require your own car or taxi. One thing you can do in Duhok is to arrange a private taxi, negotiate a price to see both of these sites. However, one other clever way to see these sites is instead of taking a shared taxi from Erbil to Duhok, is take a private taxi from Erbil to Duhok, making stops at Lalish and the monastery, and then ending your trip in Duhok. Now let's talk about Sulaymaniyah. If you stay at the hotel on the map, which I highly recommend, one of my best stays in all of Iraq, you'll be walking distance to everything we have on the map here. Sulaymaniyah was a super fun place to visit, as well as it has a couple of museums that are totally worth a visit. So if you have time, again, don't skip Sulaymaniyah. I really enjoyed my visit to Sulaymaniyah, so check out the vlogs and see if you're interested in visiting too. There are many places in Iraq that I visited and I made videos on that you can check out that we won't review here, otherwise this video will be way too long. If you have questions about any place that I didn't mention in this video, please feel free to ask below and I'll be happy to get back to you. In this section, I'm going to tell you things that will really help you in your trip to Iraq. In Iraq, you should always carry your passport because sometimes you'll be asked to show it. But especially if you're taking day trips and you might be going through checkpoints, then you'll definitely need your passport with you. When you're going from one city to another, always have a name of a hotel handy to give at checkpoints. If they ask you where you're going to stay, show them, tell them, oh, I'm staying at this hotel. Even if you haven't decided where you're going to stay and you're thinking of just figuring it out when you arrive, it's not a good idea in Iraq to go through a checkpoint and tell them, oh, I don't know where I'm going, I'll just figure it out. It's better to just say, oh, I'm going to a hotel such and such. It's best if you actually have it pinned on your map or something where they can read it in Arabic. That would be ideal. But if you tell them the name, oh, I'm going to the Baghdad hotel or I'm going to the Ur hotel, they'll be like, oh, okay, this person knows what they're doing, and it reduces their concern or confusion. Some sites and museums close surprisingly early. Their closing times might be as early as 1. So if you want to visit museums or sites, it's a good idea to double check to see when they're open. And again, it's better to do them early in the morning. Other places could be closed on weekends, and weekends would be Friday and Saturday. Funny enough, those are the times when you would think they'd be open, but sometimes that's not the case. So again, if you're planning on visiting a site or a museum, check to make sure it's open and what are the operating hours. Good news is mosques and shrines are free and they're open all the time. The typical entry fee to many sites is 25,000 Iraqi dinar, which comes out to around $17. When you arrive in Baghdad, you get a federal Iraq visa. This visa is good for all of Iraq, including Iraqi Kurdistan, and you can go back and forth between Iraqi Kurdistan and federal Iraq as many times as you want. However, if you fly into Kurdistan, that visa is only good for Iraqi Kurdistan and you can't cross to federal Iraq with it. When you look on the map, it might not be obvious, but Mosul is actually part of federal Iraq. It just happens to be very close to the Iraqi Kurdistan border. So remember, you can visit Mosul from federal Iraq without having to cross over into Iraqi Kurdistan. But again, if you have an Iraqi visa, you can easily go back and forth between Mosul and Erbil, even though Erbil is part of Iraqi Kurdistan and Mosul is part of federal Iraq. Sometimes locals don't know the most recent information. Sometimes locals are even surprised you're able to visit their country. The tourism situation in Iraq is changing very rapidly and for the better. So sometimes locals are not aware of these changes and they will tell you information that might be outdated. Like, oh, you can't visit Samarra, you need special permission or you need a special guide. That used to be true, but it's not the case. So my recommendation is to always seek out the latest info. One of the best sources for the latest information is the current travelers in the country, as well as the Facebook page, the Iraqi Travelers Cafe, where travelers post their questions, other travelers share their recent experiences, and you'll be able to find out what the latest info is on something you want to visit. Let's talk about money. Of course, you'll have to have at least $77 to get your visa on arrival. Beyond that, you should bring more money so that you can at least get to your hotel and pay for a few nights. It's not necessary that you bring all the money you need for your entire Iraq trip with you, although that's an option. It is possible to pull money from ATMs in Iraq depending on your bank. My bank had no problem pulling money from many ATMs in Iraq, and the fees were quite reasonable. However, the availability of ATMs is surprisingly low, even in big cities like Baghdad. So don't worry that there are no ATMs in Iraq, because that's not the case, but sometimes you will have to take even a taxi just to get to an ATM that works for you. So overall, it's a good idea to bring most of the money you think you might need with you to Iraq, but don't worry that you won't be able to get money once you're in Iraq, because you can. In Iraq, when they say meat, they're usually referring to lamb or beef, but lamb is much more popular. So if you're a vegetarian and you tell someone you don't eat meat, to them that means you still eat chicken and fish. So if you are a vegetarian or a vegan, just remember, telling them you don't eat meat is not descriptive enough. In Iraq, just like many other countries, when you check in a hotel, it's a good idea to check a few rooms before you pick which one you want. Because oftentimes in these older hotels, all rooms are not renovated at the same time. And they might be giving you an older room and see if you're okay with it and save the renovated rooms for the next guest. But if you have them show you multiple rooms, you can find the best room at the same price. There are some things I recommend you do even before you get to Iraq. There are two Facebook groups that I recommend you join. One of them is called the Iraqi Travelers Cafe. They're a very active, very helpful group that will answer your questions. You can often find answers to your questions because someone else has already asked that question and someone else has already answered it. Another Facebook group is called Explore Kurdistan, Iraq. Again, you can find useful information on that Facebook page. Before coming to Iraq, of course, you should get some US dollars. There are some apps that I recommend you download as they'll help you when you get to Iraq. Download Google Translate as well as the Arabic language. That'll help you communicate with the locals. Download the taxi apps, Kareem as well as Uber. I also recommend you download an app that shows numbers in Arabic. I was surprised how many locals did not know what I was typing when I was using a standard calculator to show them a price. For example, I was trying to tell them, oh, how about 25,000 for this? But 25,000 in our numbers means nothing to them. However, if you find an app that shows numbers in Arabic, then you can put in 25,000 or whatever number you want when you're trying to communicate a number to them, and then they could respond. You can use that to negotiate and agree on the final price. All right, now in this section, we're going to cover things you should watch out for. Earlier in the video, I mentioned there was something you had to watch out for regarding a hotel reservation. What this was, sometimes people would show up, and when they're applying for the visa, they would be asked for proof of hotel reservation, and unless if they had a reservation with a particular list of hotels, each person was charged $50. No one really knows what this was for. However, my recommendation is to check the Facebook group, Iraqi Travelers Cafe, and see if this issue is still going on and to see what the best recommendation is in order to deal with it. But hopefully by the time you watch this video and you're going to Iraq, this issue, whatever it was, has been resolved. These next things we're going to talk about seemed kind of like a scam at first, but then when you learn what's going on, you realize it's not a scam at all. The places that have entrance fees generally have an entrance fee for a foreigner and a local. And the foreigner fee is 25,000 dinars, which is around $17, and the local price is around 3,000 dinars, which is obviously much less. This is not a scam, and these are actual prices. When you're at a garage and you're about to take a ride from one city to another, often the front passenger seat is a different price than the back seats. And many times as a foreigner, when you show up to a garage and ask what the price is, you'll be quoted the front seat passenger price, maybe as a courtesy so that you're getting the best seat because it is better. However, anytime you like, you can ask to sit in the back at the lower price. So when a friend tells you it costs $10,000 to go from one city to another from a shared taxi, they're probably quoting you the rear seat price. And again, when you're at a garage, you can ask for the rear seat and pay the regular price. Now this one, again, has to do with shared taxis. Oftentimes, when you take a regular taxi to a garage in order to book a shared taxi, before you've even gotten out of your taxi, there'll be a bunch of people trying to bid for your business. And they'll ask where you want to go. And so, for example, you're in Baghdad and you want to go to Karbala. And from your taxi, you say Karbala. And then someone will nod and say, yeah, come with me. And a lot of times you have to watch out that this might be a private taxi offer. Now, they're not scamming you, but they're not telling you it's a private taxi. So if you've expected to pay, say, $10,000 for a particular ride, if you just sit in one of these private taxi cars, of course the cost isn't going to be $10,000 anymore. So what you really need to do when you get to a garage is to make sure you're not rushed into a private taxi without your knowledge. The recommendation, therefore, is when you get to the garage, don't be in a rush. There'll be cars going all the time, especially for popular sites. Clarify you're looking for a shared taxi, and if you want the back seat, that you want the back seat. You should look up what the prices are for your ride before you arrive, verify with them that that's the price you're going to pay, and with their acknowledgement, you'll be all set. So it's kind of a gray area if you're getting scammed into a private taxi or not. However, the way to avoid that is as I explained. Yet another thing about taking shared taxis that could cause you to pay more than you expected. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that it's best to go from a garage to a garage. The reason for that is that the prices for those trips are set. So if a price is $10,000 from a garage to a garage, that's what it will be, no problems. However, if suddenly the taxi driver is asking you where you're going and you don't tell them that you're going to the garage in your destination city, instead you tell them that you're going to such and such hotel, they might then take you to your hotel, and when it's time to pay, you won't pay the regular price, you'll pay some different price. And you'll be like, hey, I thought going from here to here is say 10,000, and they'll be like, well, yeah, but I took you to your hotel and that's extra. I know a few people that this happened to. Again, to avoid this, just always say you're going from garage to garage, have the price confirmed, and then go there. Now, one thing you can do is with that same driver is see if they're willing to then take you to your hotel so that you don't have to pick a separate taxi from the destination garage to your hotel, and agree on that price as a separate price than from going from the garage to the garage. So again, I hope that doesn't sound too confusing, but if you stick with going from a garage to a garage at the predetermined price, you'll probably avoid any misunderstandings. Okay, this one I'll mention just because it happened to me, and it's very minor, but again, it's a misunderstanding and not a scam. The topic is chai. The price of chai in a typical glass is $250. However, if you order chai in the little paper takeaway cups, the price is generally $500. And to me, both of those seemed like they contain the same amount of tea, but I was surprised that the price was so different. But again, this is normal and not a scam. Another thing you should know is when you order coffee, it's a drastically different price than a tea. So where a chai will be $250 or $500 in a to-go cup, a coffee could be $1,000 in a to-go cup, and that's perfectly normal. Now keep in mind that $250 is not a lot of money, and neither is $1,000. But when you're used to paying $250 for chai and suddenly someone wants to charge you $1,000 for coffee, at first you might feel like you're being scammed, but you're not. It's just that chai is so cheap and coffee is just more regular price. But all are actually quite low when you compare what they equal to US dollars. Just to summarize, that almost everything that I mentioned here that you had to watch out for wasn't in fact a scam at all, just a possible misunderstanding that now you can avoid having watched this video. The only thing that's a scam or really feels like a scam is the entire, proof of hotel reservation, which again, check for the latest info on forums like the Iraqi Travelers Cafe. So I hope this makes you feel a lot better about visiting Iraq and worry much less. I've made this guide because I truly believe that Iraq is an extremely rewarding place for anyone who visits, and because there's not a lot of recent information about traveling Iraq out there. Every time I think about my experiences in Iraq, I'm filled with joy, and I feel so lucky to have had the chance to travel there. Once you visit, I bet you'll fall in love with Iraq too. And you'll be really upset with how the rest of the world media portrays it. Okay, so Iraq isn't your all-inclusive Jamaican resort getaway vacation. It will take some patience and some sense of adventure to explore it. But I tell you with full confidence that if you decide to travel Iraq, you will be rewarded beyond what you can imagine. I hope this guide has helped you in some way, as well as my other videos on Iraq. Please let me know if you have any questions. Use the comment section below. I'll be happy to get back to you with the best information I have available. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Big love to my viewers and subscribers, and big love to my amazing Iraqi friends and to incredible Iraq.